Back in the day, I got on the horn with Harry Lorraine.
Hi, Mr. Lorraine. This is Anthony Metivier calling.
How you doing? You're right on the button.
Oh, that's great. Calling from Berlin, Germany, as I think I mentioned. And
Yes. Boy, you're a long way from here.
The legendary Harry Lorraine, the co-author of the memory book and many, many memory books of his own. And he told me something that inspired me so much, I've never forgotten it. Hardly a day goes by when I don't think about it, and it drives me to keep reading about memory techniques, to keep using them myself, to keep teaching them to as many people as I possibly can. And I'll share what he told me in this video, and it's going to help us solve the puzzle of a question that I get frequently, which is, if memory techniques are so good, why isn't everybody in the world using them? Well, let's just call a spade and cut to the chase. Everybody does use memory techniques, at least almost everybody. And how do I know this? Well, anybody who has ever taken a note is using a memory technique. Taking notes is a memory technique. If you've ever repeated something in your head to try to help yourself remember it, be it a phone number or a passcode or whatever it is, that is a memory technique, repetition, right? And it's rote repetition. It's a memory technique as much as using a memory palace is a memory technique. Mnemonics just means memory technique, right? Now there's different kinds of mnemonics, and it's true, not everybody under the sun uses a memory palace. But here's the catch. You know, a lot of people ask me, Anthony, why don't you do a beginner's memory course? You're always doing this sort of intermediate advanced stuff. And the reality is that there's so many beginner's memory training out there, we don't really need another one, certainly not for me. And frankly, if you ask my opinion, my philosophy, if you know where your fridge is, you're already a master of memory. You just need to take it to the next level and use the magnetic memory method. So, what is it that stops so many people from actually taking it to that next level, given that they're already quite masterful in their minds? They already are experiencing the miracle of memory every single day just by, wow, you know where your fridge is. I mean, that is truly a miracle. Well, one of the things is timing. So not everybody is ready for memory techniques when they find them. And listen, this happens to me as well. Sometimes I'll find a new podcast and something just doesn't gel. Maybe their voice is a little bit annoying or what have you. And I have learned over the years to kill my like-dislike monster. I shared with you some of the techniques for doing that in my TEDx talk, and it's just 2 simple questions. So if you haven't seen that, you might want to go and learn those questions. And they're very, very powerful for making you have more patience with the things that rub you the wrong way. You know, one of the coolest things that the internet did is it allowed people who don't have hair and makeup teams just get on a camera and share their passion and their knowledge with the world. You know, we're sick of CNN and CBS and NBC and all the rest. We wanted and we're so hungry for everyday people to be able to share their knowledge. And sadly, this is being eroded day after day as the internet becomes more and more like network television. So if you like this content, make sure that you get subscribed, hit that thumbs up, and let me know in the comments what you think is the reason why not everybody is using more intermediate and advanced memory techniques. Part of the answer is that people are judgmental and they're just not patient. So I hope you can learn some patience, because there's so much you could be learning so much faster if you didn't write off or discount someone's hair, for example. And believe me, I've gotten a lot of strange hate mail about my hair. How my hair could stand between me and anybody learning the memory techniques from me or anybody else, I have no idea, other than they maybe were in a bad mood, so I hope they came back on Thursday. Now, the other thing is that some teachers just have a style that isn't going to work for certain people. And in my case, my teaching style is probably best expressed by Bruce Lee. Let's have a look, shan't we? On page 89 of this edition of Striking Thoughts, Bruce Lee says something that I think really cuts to the quick. I think it's page 89 using the magnetic bookmark technique. He says that teaching requires a sensitive mind with great flexibility. The onus is on the student, according to this model. Above all, Bruce Lee says, a teacher does not depend on a method and drill systematic routines. Instead, the teacher studies each individual student and awakens that student to explore him or herself, both internally and externally, and ultimately integrate him or herself with his or her being. Such teaching, which is really no teaching, requires a sensitive mind with great flexibility and is difficult to come by nowadays. Now, I'm very fortunate that I'm able to come across enough people who are very flexible and do want to put these things into action. They're ready for it and they're able and capable of doing so. And that has to do with luck and chance. And the more messages I put out there, it's like putting more trees in the forest for more people to bump into, and the math is just there. So what I would recommend that you do is get yourself a nice big old playlist of memory improvement videos and bump into as many different teachers as you can. Order up as many memory improvement books as you can and have them visible in front of you or in your room so you see them again and again and again, so that you increase the chances and the likelihood of absorbing that information and putting it into action. Another major problem is that a lot of people don't have the attention span to be able to use memory techniques for long enough in order to get a benefit. And that's really sad, because we have a chicken and the egg problem here. If you want to increase your attention span, using memory techniques is one of the best ways to do it. But if you don't have attention span enough to start using it, then how are you ever going to get those benefits? Well, one of the things that you can do is start digital fasting. Start detoxing yourself from the internet. What you need is something that's called tonic dopamine. So when we're on the internet, we're getting dopamine spikes all the time. We're flipping between tabs, we're watching videos that are interrupted by advertisement at the most inopportune time, and it's flashing lights at our brain, and all kinds of stuff is going on that degrades our attention span instead of improving and increasing it. So one of the best things that you can do is leave the device at home, go for a walk, sit and read for an hour or two away from any interruptions. This will help heal your attention span. And while you're out there, why not read a memory improvement book? You might want to read, I don't know, The Victorious Mind. Maybe you want to read On the Shadows of the Ideas. I have them here on the shelf for a reason. And yes, I do advertise too. There's no two ways about it. But the advertising I'm trying to do is to free your mind, not trap it and reduce your ability to focus and concentrate. I'm trying to give you that tonic dopamine. And one of the reasons why I have tonic dopamine that is strong and sturdy enough to be able to focus and concentrate, even though I'm a very busy-minded person, is precisely because I use these techniques in meditative ways. And they give such peace of mind so that I'm not distracted while I'm trying to learn. So if you have these kinds of issues, you need to just find a way. And now you have a solution. Digital fasting is massively helpful for me personally, and I'm so glad that I practice it regularly and religiously. Another huge problem that just breaks my heart is that some people have a low self-opinion. They just don't believe in themselves. And you know what? I've been there. I've had such negative thoughts about myself that I almost snuffed it. Okay, and I talk about that in the opening of The Victorious Mind. And it's just luck and fortune that kept me safe and got me back on the road to health. And then I was lucky to run into a memory teacher that I did gel with, and then I ran into a bunch more that I did gel with. And you know, one of those was Harry Lorraine, that inspired me so much, and it was amazing to be able to talk to him on the phone at one point. And what I have to share with you from what he told me is really, really important. We'll get to that in a second. But in terms of, you know, changing your mindset, one thing that is known to work, and Nir Eyal has shared this in a book called Indistractable, the research behind this, is that if you adopt a mental metaphor, you're much more likely to be able to adopt the behavior that you want. So if you're struggling to have discipline, well, you could borrow one of my metaphors. I've used this metaphor a lot, and it's really helpful. I think about switching on my discipline engine. In fact, I've got my discipline engine on right now. The whole world was upended today. The time I normally record my videos, someone was making noise in the neighborhood and I couldn't record. And now I'm a little bit tired and, you know, I'd rather be doing something else. But my discipline engine came to mind, and I have trained myself so that it comes to mind on autopilot because I practice using it a lot, and boom, here I am to get the mission done, because it needs doing, obviously, because not everybody in the world is using memory techniques, right? So the discipline engine is one. Another one that I use is I think of my memory as a magnetic garden, and it needs to be weeded. It needs to be, fertilized. The soil needs to be tilled, and new seeds need to be planted, and then they need to be watered. And I think of that all the time. And it's a wonderful one. You can borrow that if you like. And I encourage you to just come up with your own metaphors. And Nir Eyal has the scientific references, and there's many ways to find scientific references, but this isn't anything new. Nietzsche was talking about adopting personae a long time ago. And where did he get that from? He got that idea from the ancient Greeks. So if it works for the ancient Greeks, I mean, why can't it work for us? Well, the answer is that it can. So spend some time trying to think about what kind of mental metaphors you can use. And when I write, I often think about having a fighter pilot attitude, which is something I borrowed from Gary Halbert. And there's just a wonderful piece where he talks about the fighter pilot attitude and just getting in there and making it happen, and just it's really, really been helpful for me. So I hope that helps you as well if you're struggling to get these techniques together. And one of the reasons why so many people don't is because they don't know to use their minds to craft and shape a version of themselves that they can just sort of switch on or upload into action and then get it done. Because when you get it done, life feels so much more rewarding and fulfilling, and you might just say magnetic. Another problem people face doesn't really have the perfect word for it, but I'm going to use it anyway with some reservation and some qualification, and that is the idea of a learning style. So what I don't mean is the idea that you're visual or you're auditory or you're kinesthetic. A lot of that has been debunked, and Tesia Marshik has a great TEDx talk about that. I'll leave the link for that in the description, and you can check that out and see what her research found, because what they find is that when they change the delivery of the information for so-called different learning preferences, then what ends up happening is that nothing happens. Basically, there is no evidence that anybody has any particular learning style or even a preference. However, there is something like overthinking, and there is something like the why learner. So some people, they can't learn if they don't know why something works, or they get hung up. It's an obstacle, and they want that fulfilled before they can move on. Then there's someone who might need to know what something is before they can dive in. Some people just need to know how something works before they can get rolling. And other people are just like, get rid of that junk. Give me the action steps so that I can keep moving. And I was one of those just give me the action steps kind of person, and I've been like that my whole life. The problem is that oftentimes I wound up giving up on skills because I actually would have benefited from having the how and the why and the what, but I didn't want it, right? So it's not exactly learning style or learning preference. I'm not sure what the term is for that, but it is this kind of inclination to just need certain things fulfilled in order to be able to move on. And when it comes to memory techniques, this is a big problem, because memory techniques are not really something that happens in words or happens in books. You're not going to find the techniques in the courses and the books. You're going to learn them from the books, but you're only going to learn them from experience. So how is that possible? You're going to learn them in the books, but you're not going to learn them in the books. You have to learn them in experience. Well, a lot of people, what they do is they try to think the skills. But what you have to do is take certain kinds of action without thinking too much about it. So imagine if you were trying to think about tying your shoes, right? You could think until you're blue in the face, and that's not going to make your shoes tie. Now, there's obviously some people out there who are a little bit in woo-woo land who believe in such things, but without evidence that it's actually happening, it's obviously not happening. And it's not going to happen with memory techniques either. You can't really think your way into it. There might be somebody out there who has just completely thought it out, but for most of us, we're going to need to stop thinking about it and to take action. So for example, I teach drawing memory palaces, and it's really, really important for me because it gets it into the physical mode. And I couldn't understand memory palaces. I couldn't even understand what they were talking about seeing pictures at all, right? So I just looked at some of the old memory books and saw these diagrams in Giordano Bruno's books, and I thought, he must have drawn those, or at least described them to an artist so that they could wind up in those books. So I thought, I'll just draw my own memory palaces. And then I started to understand a lot better, and I was able to actually use it because I could see the memory palaces. So I encounter a lot of people, and I have over the last decade, who are stuck in one of those modalities. They either need to know more about how it all works, they need to know more about why it works, they need to know more about what all these techniques are, the history, yada, 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 or they just want the action steps. And each and every one of them has problems with falling flat on their face, because we need all of that working together in combination, and we then just need to take action. The steps are clear. They're so wonderfully described in so many ways in so many different places that it can drive you bonkers trying to catch up with it all. But if you would just take one and take action on it for 90 days, you'll give your brain the ability to figure it out. And that's how you're going to figure it out. Not by thinking about it or overthinking about it, but actually thinking about what you've done. So you take action, then you theorize about the action that you took, and then you get better and better and better. Study and practice, study and practice. Or better said, study, practice, theorize, study and practice. And it's just a perfect circle. It's going to help you so much, but not everybody in the world knows to do that. And not everybody who knows to do that does it. And it's a little bit of a mystery why, but I think we're getting to the ultimate answer. One more angle to look at before we get to what Harry Lorraine told me. Not everybody is going to learn a martial art, even though just about everybody under the sun at just about every age would benefit from being able to defend themselves. Not everybody's going to learn how to play chess, even though we know from many studies that chess helps you improve your brain and your critical thinking skills. Not everybody's going to learn a language, even though we know that learning a language helps fortify the brain against things like Alzheimer's and dementia. And not everybody is going to learn how to debate so that they not only can formulate better arguments that persuade other people and help them get ahead in life, but that on the flip side of the coin, they're able to assess the arguments better made by others and come to more reasonable conclusions in how we conduct and engage in affairs with other people. And that's just a mystery why not everybody gets the same exposure. There's a lot of unfairness in the world. There's a lot of strife. There's conflict. And not one amongst us has figured out the solution to make fairness and equality spread to all people. But we have a chance to get there if we would educate ourselves and enable others to educate themselves better and better. And again, that's what's been so cool about the internet, even though it's still in its infancy. And it's so sad to see it being eroded by a sort of network television ads everywhere mentality. So, what did Harry Lorraine tell me that helps me show up and fight the battle as long as I can, as hard as I can, with as much passion as I have for these techniques? He said that even if people never use them, merely hearing about memory techniques changes their lives. And I think this is absolutely true. It is very, very difficult to find out when people have memory techniques and you don't, without having some sort of, oh, that is interesting. I wish I had a better memory. Why? Because everybody has memory. If there is one way in which we are truly all equal, it is that our consciousness is produced by memory. It is produced by memory. Literally, if the brain is real, then the operations of all that physical matter floating around in our skulls, it is creating consciousness, and that consciousness is managed by procedural memory, figural memory, episodic memory, autobiographical memory, and so on, all these levels of memory. And when you hear about a technique that would enable you to learn faster and remember more, it's very, very difficult to forget. And it does, I believe Harry Lorraine is right, it does transform you. Then it all just comes down to luck of the draw, whether you are prepared and willing to use those techniques and whether you're in the mood to pay attention to the good news at the time that you hear about them so that you can take them to the first level, the next level, and the level beyond that. So if you are struggling and you've heard these techniques and you want to reach that level, but you still can't figure out what is going wrong in your own life, or maybe you just don't have the confidence, maybe you have some fear around them, make sure you watch my video on using a memory journal and 3 mind mapping exercises that will give you the confidence to not only use these techniques for the next couple of days, but for the rest of your life.